let's talk about insider tips for founders that want to be acquired by another company. When you are building a software company to be acquired, you do it differently than just having a business that's meant to be a lifestyle business. You want to start with the exit or the acquisition in mind and then work backwards to engineer the outcome that you want, which is to be acquired by another company or an institutional investor of some sort. So always start with the end in mind and work backwards. Next, one of the things you got to do if you're going to sell to institutional investors is you have to eliminate what I call deal breaker risks. Professional investors are very adverse to certain kinds of risk that you have to get rid of. When you are building a company to sell, you want to eliminate deal breaker type risks that an institutional investor will refuse to buy into. Right? Institutional investors are very, very risk conscious. There are certain kinds of businesses they refuse to buy because the risk is too high. And I'm not talking about the product scaling or whether or not you're going to dominate the market. I'm talking about more fundamental things like, do you own your software? Right? You'd be surprised, shocked how many businesses under 10 million in ARR don't have intellectual property agreements that guarantees and proves that they own the software that they call their product, right? So if some engineer 15 years ago has 2 lines of code, right, in your code base, and you don't have an IP or intellectual property assignment agreement or an employment contract that specifically outlines who owns the intellectual property, that business is not viable, right? They won't touch it because it poses too much of a risk. They're going to spend way too much money to just have a product that they may not even have the rights to own. That's a problem that you need to solve if you're designing your business to sell. Next, you want to understand the current market value of your business and what is the gap between the market value that you want and the market value that you have and have earned right now. And that gap is where you want to focus your time going forward, right? And in particular, you want to figure out why is there a difference in those values? And it's not just having to do with the size of the business. Although size of the business is one factor that drives valuation, it is by no means the only one. Here are a couple other ones to think about. Your gross margins, if they are too low, you're a very unattractive business. SaaS businesses need to have gross margins roughly in the mid to upper 80% range. That's a healthy SaaS business. If you are lower than that, that means your product is hard to use. You need to throw labor against that. That is a problem that reduces your valuation. If your growth rate is too low, if you're not a rule of 40 company where your growth rate plus your EBITDA profitability margins don't add up to 40 or higher, such as growing 20% per year with 20% profits per year, that's a rule of 40 company. If you're not a rule of 40 company, then you're going to get a lower valuation, right? So there are things that detract from getting top dollar for your business, and you want to know what they are now so you can spend the next couple of years working on them and getting rid of those issues that get in the way of getting top dollar a year, 2 or 3 or 4 down the road. I hope you found this video useful. If you're pretty serious about building a business to be acquired, then I'm going to offer you my free guide on how to be acquired by another company or outside investor. Just enter the words acquired in the comment section, and I'll share with you all my experience around helping companies prepare to get big enough and be ready for an institutional exit or institutional acquisition by another company. Right? So hope you like this video. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, like the video, ask any questions you might have, and then enter the words acquired to get my free guide on how to build a SaaS company that is ready for institutional buyer to acquire it down the road.